Hi, so today I'll be teaching you how to cut this jacket. It's just like a jacket suit, very simple to do. So you start by marking out your borderline before any other thing on your paper. And then from the tip of your paper, you mark 3 inches all the way down to the length of your jacket. So I'm marking out 3 inches all the way down. So as I've done marking these 3 inches, I will outline it so that you see the line all the way down. And just so you know, this is just a simple jacket that looks like a suit. So from where I started with the borderline, I also had to take my shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement added by 1 inch. So for a jacket, if your shoulder is 16, just do well to give it like 1 inch 17. Don't make it to be proper shoulder line. So here I'm drawing out my basic neckline, which is 3 by 3.5, and a slanted shoulder, and then I'll proceed to mark my armhole. So for the armhole, I did 7 inches on the armhole. Then I'll outline my bust, my waist, and then my hip measurement, and then the length of the jacket. So from my waist, how to get my hip is from my waist to 8.5, and that is how I got my hip, my hip, because I'm using my measurement. So that I will have to outline what I'm marking. So this is the bust area, and this is the waist, this is the hip area, and the length of my jacket, which is there about 26, plus the sewing allowance 1.5. So I'll proceed by marking out my armhole. In marking out your armhole, like I said, I use 7 and half of 7. From the half of 7, I'll go in by 1.5. I'll go in just to get the depth of my armhole. And here I'll start by taking quarterly measurement of my bust, my waist, and my hip. So I'll start, my bust is 38.5. So here I try to add, when I'm doing a jacket, this kind of jacket, because it's not a fitted jacket, a suit, you add from 4 inches and above, depending on how free you want to the jacket to be. But do well not to measure your accurate do well not to take your accurate measurements. You have to add from 4 and above. So I add 4 to my measurement, and so that it won't be free, it will still fit properly and smartly too. So right now I'm done outlining my bust, my waist, and my hip, and I will, yeah, so I will proceed to work on the lapel of this jacket. But before then, from the waist, I'll raise by 1, and then from that same waistline, I'll mark out half inches all the way down. This half inch is a sewing allowance, so I don't temper with the body of the jacket. So I've marked that half inch. Then I'll proceed by I've felt like, okay, this is what I want, and I'll proceed by marking out the body of this jacket. Those lines that I have ticked, I'll mark out, I'll outline them, and I'll also outline the sewing allowance to be sure that this is what I want. So I'll outline this all the way to the down point. Now for the down point, if you notice, I didn't curve it at the down. So I would like to curve it at the down so that it doesn't tip mouth, it doesn't look like it's flay, so that it looks very smart. at the downside. So I'll start by marking out, I'll raise it by 1.5. If you want, it depends on how you want it curved by the side. You can curve it by 2, you can curve it by 3, but I decided to curve it by 1.5. So that's that. So now I want to mark out my neckline. Remember I said I did the basic neckline, which is 3 and 3.5 by the length of the neckline and 3 by the width of the neckline. So 3 by the width and 3 as the length. So now I proceed to mark out the collar of this dress. You see what I'm doing? So that's that. It's very simple. It's just very simple, nothing much. So now on the neckline, I will give it half-inch allowance, the sewing allowance, so that it doesn't temper. If I'm sewing, it doesn't temper with on the body, on the major neckline. Because if you don't do this, what it means is that as you have given it 3.5, by the time you finish sewing it, you're now sewing 4 inches if you don't bring out this half-inch as a sewing allowance. So I'll proceed by marking it out so that you see very well. I so I hope you're understanding at this point. If you don't understand, please you can comment. You can leave your comments and let me know where your confusion is. So this place is very, very important, this part. So here I marked out half from the dam, from the base. Why is because your jackets, when you cut them, they're supposed to be opening at the down parts. They're not supposed to be kissing each other. So I kind of went in by 1.5 so that by the time you wear your jacket, it just naturally opens at the base part. It's very simple. You could see what I just did. I just went in by 1.5 all the way to the waist of it, but I didn't cut it. I just had to cut the initial one that I did, and here I just had to cut off that edge because I felt like it's sharp. So here you could actually see that the jacket is almost ready, and this is me trying to do some of the trimmings, and I just felt like I didn't like how sharp the lapel is, and I just decided to trim it. From here you could feel if this jacket will be big, if it will be too small, if it will be too tight when you um, do your collar, after you're done with your collar. So it's just me trying to trim off and check some of the things. So yeah, here now, you now fold that borderline, that 3 inches that you initially marked, you fold it inside so that you can be able to cut the back. You can see what I'm doing. You just fold it inward, um, all the way. That 3 inches borderline we did initially, you just fold it all the way to enable you cut the back. So we place the back paper, and then also you fold inside that 1 inch on the shoulder line, that half-inch on the shoulder line, sorry, and then you trace the back using the front. So I'll trace the back, I'll trace the armhole. First of all, I'm pinning it down so that it doesn't move. You know, your pattern paper can move, and if you have a a sofa board as a table, you can always use pin on your paper, it will just hold. So at the back of it, I'll mark out 1.5 inch all the way down. You could see what I'm doing. I'm marking 1.5 inch all the way down. So here, if you want, this is more like a zip allowance, but because our jacket doesn't have zip, but still what that does is this 1.5 at the back, what it does is it gives it a curve. So here on the armhole, I'm doing the armhole, so the back armhole wouldn't be as deep as the front armhole. So at the back of our jackets, what you first mark is the half back length. So for my half back length is 14.5, and I marked it. And this is me trying to trace my 1.5 properly. So I marked the half back length, which is 14. And then from that point, I went in by one. So at the upper part, I left it as 1.5. From that 1 inch, I went inside and marking 1.5 too. Then I'll trace it out. What I'm doing is giving it that at the back so that the back can at least go in a bit so that it can have shape at the back in as much as it's a free jacket. All the way, this is the hip from the half length of the back. I mark the hip, which is if my half length at the back is 14, from 14 I mark the hip and then I connect the dots, and then I went in all the way down. I hope you understand what I just explained. If you have any reservations, you can ask me on the comment section. I went ahead to trace out the sides using the front, so you could see what I'm doing, just tracing and tracing so that I can cut it and it will still be equal at the base and by the side. So I will cut it out. You could see that at the back. At the down base of this part I'm cutting, I just went in by one up. Why I did that is because I want the length of the back to be shorter than the front so that it will have a very smart look. So here I'm trying to trace out the half length back, the hip, back hip, and that's it. I'll proceed to cut. So this is the dart that I was telling you about. This helps the back to go inside. So this part where I'm cutting now, you could see that is shorter. I raised it up by 1 inch. That's the length of the back is not the same as the length of the front. At the back side, not the side, all the sides will be equal, but that center back will be shorter. That's the back will be shorter than the front so that it will have a smarter look. So I finished cutting out the back, and yes, it's basically that, very simple. I will notch the allowance, so I will sew that allowance, and it's basically that. So this is me putting the front one, and for this front one I will now cut off the ½ inch I added on the shoulder, because if I don't trim it off it will become excess. So I will trim it off, but I won't trim off the ½ inch I added on the neck base. I only trim off the one I added on the shoulder, because I already added allowance at the back of the shoulder. So I'll proceed to fold, make sure that they align together, and then I will cut the neck. So for the back of the neck, I'll mark out a 1.5, because there will be a collar on it. So you don't need to go down, you just 1.5 is okay, and I'll trim it off. And basically that is how to cut this simple jacket. Very simple to cut, very easy. So not to forget that half at the front base that I said I'll mark. You see what I'm doing, and you will see where I'm going with this. So and the front, I remember saying that you don't want your jacket to be kissing each other. So now is when I will trim it off. Remember, 1.5, go in by 1.5 from the base all the way to the waist. So basically that is all for this jacket. It's very easy to cut. Try it and let me know your how it actually came out. So for the back of this jacket, I will want to outline it in case if you're sewing it, so that you will see how you will sew it. So you start by 1.5 from the tip, and you sew it 1.5 all the way down. When you're sewing it, the dots, you even see that you're already giving it that. Remember, why you're doing this is for the back to have that snatch effect when you're looking at it, making it look like it's actually like a fitted, it's not too loose. So that's it basically. This is the back and this is the front. It's very simple. I would love you to try it. If there's any question that you have or something that you don't understand, please feel free and ask the question on the comments. And on my next video, I'll be teaching you how to sew this jacket. Thank you.